back from the stress and preoccupations of his or her life and going out perhaps under a starry night and looking up and contemplating the wonder of it all and that sense of awe with the question of why is there all of this and not just nothingness? In a God-inspired revelry, this ancient Jew conjured up this story, lasting a total of 6 days, in which God set about creating, bringing order out of utter chaos, each day bringing increasing complexity, culminating in the final day during which human beings were brought into being, with an identity that distinguished us from all previously created beings. We were made, it says, in the image and likeness of God. When the scientific process was developed and refined, leading to increasing insights into the nature of creation, these insights often came into conflict with a literal interpretation of Scripture. People felt compelled to take sides in a battle centered at first in the realm of biology, in particular over the theory of evolution. Was creation brought about in 6 days in the precise manner that Genesis 1 depicts, with each separate creation made in an instance? Or did evolution have it right, describing a long, gradual process? There seemed to be no room for gray. Evolution, with its apparently random process of hits and misses, seemed too haphazard to leave any room for God. People felt compelled to choose between believing in God and the Bible or believing in the logical processes of science, and that was quite unfortunate. Last century, the science of cosmology, the study of the origins of the universe, entered the picture with the surprising discovery that there was an apparent beginning to the universe, the so-called Big Bang. A lot of the same sorts of Christians who felt threatened by evolution initially found the Big Bang threatening as well. And yet, oddly, if you don't feel compelled to take Genesis 1 literally, both the notion of the Big Bang and the theory of evolution have a surprising harmony to the intuitions of that original author of Genesis 1. First, there actually was a beginning to the universe. Before the compelling evidence for the Big Bang, most scientists assumed that the universe was static, unchanging, that it didn't really have a beginning. It just always was. But no, there was, as that ancient biblical author intuited, a beginning. And as evolution suggested, we human beings came around at a very late stage of creation, after almost everything else, living and otherwise, had already come into existence. That ancient Jew staring up at the sky had no way of knowing what the cosmology scientists have discovered regarding just how long the universe has been in existence. I have a little graph for you. The Big Bang occurred, they believe, 13.8 billion years ago. The Earth came into being like another 9 billion years after that initial Big Bang. And then the simplest of life forms on Earth, another billion years passed for that single-celled creatures. And then, to look at this, so just as you get this right, this is the Big Bang, this is the solar system, this is Earth, dinosaurs, and this little speck here, that's human beings. You see it like that, and it's kind of remarkable, our appearance in this creation. To get a sense of this, if the time of the Big Bang till now were 24 hours, then human beings have been around for all of 2 seconds. A very late entry, to say the least. And as Genesis 1 indicates, something altogether new occurred in the big history of the universe with the late arrival of we human beings. In a certain sense, the universe itself awakened to its existence. No creature that came before us had the capacity to ponder the universe and the mystery of our lives and to ask the question, what does it all mean? Why is there everything and not just nothing? Is there a purpose to it all? Why are we here? It's the first time in all those billions of years that the question was asked. And religion, for a good long time, has been the realm in which human beings have pondered these sorts of questions. And for the vast majority of human history, religion was not much more than human beings attempting to control the things they couldn't control that determined their survival, essentially sacrifices to unseen gods who it was believed controlled the coming of the rains or the movements of the animals that made for a successful hunt. But anthropologists who have studied the history of religion believe that something happened, something very profound happened, arising a little less than 3,000 years ago in several different locations and cultures around the world. A very, very late stage in the big history indeed. As far as anthropologists can tell, religion moved into this place in which it began to ponder this invisible, perfect realm, unchanging, indestructible, that had a moral dimension to it. It wasn't anymore about appeasing gods. It had to do with being in touch with this goodness, this realm of rightness that was intuited across the globe. To name but a few of these traditions, with the rise of Buddhism in the East and the great philosophers in ancient Athens and the Jewish tradition in Palestine, including the author of Genesis 1, in differing symbolic language, they each express this intuition that this material world, that beyond this material world, there is a deeper, unseen, imperishable reality with a distinctly moral nature, a deeper level of truth. And that the purpose of our lives involved living in harmony with this truth, that there was a right way to live as opposed to a wrong way to live. There were certain sages that came up in all these cultures with this insight that got passed on in the creation of religions occurring. And so they presented, in a sense, an answer to that question. What does it all mean? This uniquely human question. For instance, the author of Genesis 1 intuited an unseen good God behind all that was, one who created a good creation, not a bad creation. That life itself, this God had made, is good. It's a good gift. That life's meaning was found in living in conscious relationship with the God who gave us life, who requires a life that refrained from things the Ten Commandments talked about, killing, stealing, lying, and that we were to care for the less fortunate than ourselves. That this has somehow in touch with the deepest nature of reality. Perhaps because of the unfortunate centuries of old hostility that arose between the realms of religion and science, the majority of scientists concluded that the distinctive quality of human beings, that we alone, of all creatures, asked the question of meaning, had no basis in a deeper reality. That the universe was essentially meaningless. That the only meaning that exists in life is the meaning that we choose to create. A conclusion many of us would find reason to despair about. But science simply isn't equipped to answer the question, what does it all mean? Scientists can point to all kinds of horrible things that have been done throughout history in the name of religion to argue that the religious impulse is basically an illusion that needs to be outgrown. One of the things that religion has been used for is to undergird the power of rulers. The authorities of kings was claimed to be divinely ordained, and therefore to rebel against the king was to rebel against the authority of God. But for the most part, kings are just political leaders who wear fancy garments. And with rare exceptions, the main drive of political rulers is to solidify and hold on to power. For the most part, kings are all smoke and mirror, a polished exterior that covers whatever is required for them to hold on to power. You don't hear much about kings these days, but oddly one king has been in the news lately, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He has cultivated an image of being an enlightened leader who is trying to bring his country into the 21st century, when in fact he is a ruthless autocrat intent on crushing all opposition. And this recently came to light when a Saudi journalist who was critical of his regime and living in exile was lured into the Saudi embassy in Turkey, where the Crown Prince's hitman promptly killed him and cut him up. But this assassination is just the tip of the iceberg regarding the evils committed in the king's quest to hold on to his power, or extend it. Thousands of critics have been locked up and tortured, and worse yet, something that gets very little attention in the news because we're so preoccupied with more shallow things, is that Saudi Arabia has been engaged in essentially a war against its arch-rival, the equally evil regime of Iran, using this small Arabic country of Yemen as the battlefield. It was recently reported that 85,000 children have died of hunger as a result of this war. According to the United Nations, Yemen is the setting of the worst humanitarian crisis of our times. And it gets very little attention, and this has to do with kings holding on to power. And Saudi Arabia fights this war with weapons that have been purchased from the United States. So, this long introduction brings me to the gospel lesson. It involves kingship. This is Christ the King Sunday. It involves the question of kingship. Jesus is asked by Pilate, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate is the Roman governor who rules the region by authority granted to him by the Emperor Caesar back in Rome. He is a kind of a king. Pilate knows that the kings of this world, he knows what they're all about. They are political rulers who wield and deal in worldly power. And he's asking him, "Are you one of these kings? Are you the Jews' king?" And to which Jesus replies, "My kingdom is not of this world. I have come to bear witness to the truth." And our lesson ends with Pilate asking, "What is truth?" What does Pilate mean by that question, what is truth? On one level, it is an expression of utter cynicism and perhaps ultimately despair. He is saying there is no such thing as truth with a capital T. There is no deeper meaning to life. All that really matters is surviving, holding on to the little castle that each of us attempts to build for ourselves, where we can get some degree of pleasure and comfort before we return to the dust. Pilate seems to clearly recognize that Jesus has done nothing worthy of execution. The right thing would be to release him. But expediency is all that matters. And Pilate is in a bit of a jam here. If he doesn't sentence Jesus to die, the religious authorities may instigate a revolt. Back in Rome, Caesar likes there being no trouble in his empire, so the heck with doing the right thing, he does the expedient thing. He hands him over to be executed so that he can be assured of holding on to power. Possibly beyond the cynicism of Pilate's question, what is truth, there lies a deeper longing for a deeper meaning to life itself. Some compelling reason to do the right thing, but Pilate can't see it. The deep irony, John's Gospel would have us know, is that the deeper truth, glimpsed by all those great sages, is embodied in the man who stands there as a prisoner in front of him, about to be executed. And John's Gospel is very explicit about this from the outset. The very first line of John's Gospel echoes the very first line of Genesis 1. In the beginning, says the Gospel writer John. And he harkens back to the original creation, and he speaks about this divine logos. That's the Greek word, which gets as the root meaning of logic, which in the Bible is translated word. In the beginning, the Word was with God, the Word was God. Nothing was made without the Word being present, this logos. And then, to the astonishment of the listener, John declares, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and this Jesus of Nazareth, the one who brought everything into being, was present in this man and the life he lived. A stunning claim. The claim here is that this Jesus reveals the nature of that mysterious, unseen power out of which all of creation has been made. To see Jesus is to see the heart of the creator of the universe. And God gave us Jesus, it says a couple of chapters in the Gospel of John, perhaps the most famous verse, 3:16. Maybe he likes to wear a shirt with it. Because God so loved the world that the nature of this God is love, and the nature of this man is love. A love that's hard to get our heads around. A love for every single person, no distinctions made. The whole world and every living being. And our purpose here on earth is to live as best we can in harmony with that extraordinary love. In response to Pilate's question of whether Jesus is a king, Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the religious authorities. But fighting wars with violence that kill people and leave little children orphaned and starving to death is not what this true king is all about. The king is the ruler of this unseen reality out of which our lives, the mystery of our lives, arise. But this king invites our love, is not indifferent to our love, won't compel us to love, but invites us to love, and resists anything that resembles the coercion that is violence. So Jesus' followers will not take up a sword to fight. So we were put on this earth to love, to be kind, to encourage, to forgive. And sometimes this can be very costly, as it was for Jesus. But in the end, that is truth with a capital T. It's not a truth we made up. It's a truth that was written into creation at the very beginning. And that's why we're here, is to live out that truth, the truth that is love. Please pray with me.